East Frisia or Eastern Friesland is a coastal region in the northwest of the German federal state of Lower Saxony. It is the middle section of Frisia between West Frisia in the Netherlands and North Frisia in Schleswig-Holstein. Administratively, Ostfriesland belongs to three districts, namely Aurich, Leer, Wittmund and the city of Emden. There are 465,000 people living in an area of 3,144.26 square kilometres. There is a chain of islands off the coast called the East Frisian Islands. These islands are Borkum, Juist, Noorderney, Baltrum, Longhoek, Spiekeroog and Vangeroog. History. The geographical region of East Frisia was inhabited in Paleolithic times by reindeer hunters of the Hamburg culture. Later there were Mesolithic and Neolithic settlements of various cultures leading up to the invasion of Germanic tribes belonging to the Ingvaeonic group. Those were choice mentioned by Tacitus and Frisians. The region between the rivers Ems and Weser was inhabited by the Chauci, who were partly displaced by Frisian expansion after about 500, and were later partially absorbed into the Frisian society. The first proven historical event was the arrival of a Roman fleet under Drusus in 12 BC. The ships sailed into the course of the Ems River and returned. After the 2nd century AD there is no mention of the Chauci. Saxons also settled the region, and the East Frisian population of medieval times is based on a mixture of Frisian and Saxon elements. Nevertheless, the Frisian element is predominant in the coastal area, while the population of the higher West area expresses more Saxon influence. In the Middle Ages, people could only settle on the higher situated West areas or by erecting in the marsh areas wharfed-in artificial hills to protect the settlement, whether a single farming estate or a whole village, against the North Sea floods. In about 1000 AD the Frisians started building large dikes along the North Sea shore. This had a great effect on establishing a feeling of national identity and independence. Until the late Middle Ages, Ostfriesland resisted the attempts of German states to conquer the coasts. The period after prehistory can only be reconstructed from archaeological evidence. Access to the early history of Ostfriesland is possible in part through archaeology and in part through the studying of external sources such as Roman documents. The information becomes clearer by early Carolingian time, when a Frisian kingdom united the whole area from present-day West Frisia throughout East Frisia up to the river Weser. It was ruled by kings like the famous Redbod, whose known names were still mentioned in folk tales until recent times. Frisia was a short-lived kingdom, and it was crushed by Pippin of Herstal in 689. East Frisia then became part of the Frankish Empire. Charles the Great then divided East Frisia into two counties. At this time, Christianization by the missionaries Liaja and Willi had started. One part of East Frisia became a part of the Diocese of Bremen, the other the Diocese of Munster. With the decay of the Carolingian Empire, East Frisia lost its former bindings, and a unity of independent self-governed districts established. Their elections were held every year to choose the Redjeven, who had to be judges as well as administrators or governors. This system prevented the establishment of a feudalistic system in East Frisia during medieval times. Frisians regarded themselves as free people not obliged to any foreign authority. This period is called the time of the Friesische Freiheit, and is represented by the still well-known salute alla Fria Frisiana that affirmed the non-existence of any feudality. Frisian representatives of the many districts of the 7 coastal areas of Frisia met once a year at the Abstalsboom, located at Rehi. During the 14th century, adherence to the Redjeven constitution decayed. Catastrophes and epidemics such as pestilence intensified the process of destabilization. This provided an opportunity for influential family clans to establish a new rule. As chieftains they took control over villages, cities, and regions in East Frisia. However, they still did not establish a feudal system as it was known in the rest of Europe. Instead, the system implemented in Frisia was a system of followship which has some similarity to older forms of rule known from Germanic cultures of the north. There was a specific relation of dependence between the inhabitants of the ruled area and the chieftain, but the people retained their individual freedom and could move where they wanted. The Frisians controlled the mouth of the Ems River and threatened the ships coming down the river. For this reason the state of Oldenburg made several attempts to subjugate East Frisia during the 12th century. Thanks to the swampy terrain, the Frisian peasants defeated the Oldenburgian armies every time. In 1156 even Henry the Lion failed to conquer the region. The conflicts lasted for the next few centuries. In the 14th century Oldenburg gave up on plans to conquer Ostfriesland, restricting their attacks to irregular invasions, killing livestock, then leaving. The East Frisian chieftains used to provide shelter for pirates such as the famous Klaus Stortebeker and Godeki Michel, who were a threat to the ships of the powerful Hanseatic League which they attacked and robbed. In 1400 a punitive expedition of the Hanseatic League against East Frisia succeeded. The chieftains had to promise to discontinue their support for the pirates. In 1402 Stortebeker, who was not a Frisian by birth, was captured and executed in Hamburg. The range of power and influence differed between the chieftains. Some clans achieved a predominant state. One of these was the Tombrocks from the Broekmeland, who ruled a large part of Eastern Friesland over several generations until a former follower, Focko Ukena from Leer, defeated the last Tombrock. But a party of opposing chieftains under the leadership of the Cirkseniers from Greetsiel defeated and expelled Focko, who later died near Groningen. After 1465 one of the last chieftains from the House of Cirksena was made a count by Emperor Frederick III and accepted the sovereignty of the Holy Roman Empire. However, in 1514, the emperor ordered that a Duke of Saxony should be the heir to the Count of East Frisia. Count Edzard of East Frisia refused to accept this order and was outlawed. 24 German dukes and princes invaded Frisia with their armies. Despite the numerical superiority they failed to defeat Edzard, and in 1517 the emperor had to accept Edzard and his descendants as counts of East Frisia. East Frisia played an important role in the Reformation period. Menno Simons, founder of the Mennonite Church, found refuge there. In 1654 the counts of East Frisia, seated at Aurich, were elevated to the rank of princes. The power, however, remained limited because of a number of factors. Externally, East Frisia became a satellite of the Netherlands, Dutch garrisons being stationed in different cities permanently. Important cities like Emden were autonomously administrated by the citizens, the prince not having much influence on them. A Frisian parliament, the Ostfrieslandschaft, was an assembly of different social groups of East Frisia, jealously protecting the traditional rights and freedoms of the Frisians against the prince. East Frisian independence ended in 1744, when the region was taken over by Prussia after the last Cirksena prince had died without issue. There was no resistance to this takeover, since it had been arranged by contract beforehand. Prussia respected the traditional autonomy of the Frisians, governed by the Frisian Chancellor Sebastian Homfeld. In 1806 East Frisia was annexed by the Napoleonic Kingdom of Holland and later became part of the French Empire. Most of East Frisia was renamed the Département Ems Oriental, while a small strip of land, the Rhineland, became part of the Dutch Département Ems Occidental. The French Emperor Napoleon I undertook the greatest reform of Frisian society in history. He introduced mayors, where the local administration was still in the hands of autonomous groups of elders, introduced the Code Civil and reformed the ancient Frisian naming system by newly introducing family names in 1811. In the following years the East Frisians registered the family names, often depending on the father's name, area or master. After the Napoleonic Wars, East Frisia was occupied first by Prussian and Russian soldiers since 1813, and re-annexed by Prussia. However, in 1815, Prussia had to cede East Frisia to the Kingdom of Hanover, which itself was annexed by Prussia in 1866. Maps. Geography. The landscape is influenced by its proximity to the North Sea. The East Frisian Islands stretch for 90 kilometers along the coast. They offer dunes and sand beaches, though in the center they have grass and woods as well. The area between the islands and the coast is unique in the world. The tide leaves a broad stretch of mud flat with creeks that attract an extraordinary number of species, worms and crabs, as well as birds and seals. For this reason, the UNESCO World Heritage Fund declared the Wadden Sea, which had already been a national park, a global heritage site. Away from the coastal area, much of the physical geography is geest and heathland. Culture. Cuisine. Language. The original language of East Frisia was East Frisian, which now is almost extinct, largely replaced by East Frisian Low Saxon. Original East Frisian survived somewhat longer in several remote places, as for example in the islands, such as Vangaruga. Today a modern variant of East Frisian can be found in the Saterland, a district near East Frisia. In former times people from East Frisia who left their homes under pressure had settled in that remote area surrounded by moors and kept their inherited language alive. This language, which forms the smallest language island in Europe, is called Saterland Frisian, or, by its own name, Sealtis. It is spoken by about 1,000 people. East Frisian Low Saxon is a variant of Low German with many of its own features due to the Frisian substrate and some other influences originating in the varied history of East Frisia. It is similar to the Gronings dialect spoken in the adjacent Netherlands province of Groningen. In modern Germany, East Frisians in general have the traditional butt of ethnic jokes similar to Polish jokes in America. This is mainly the case in the north. Tea. In an otherwise coffee-drinking country, East Frisia is noted for its consumption of tea and its tea culture. Strong black tea is served whenever there are visitors to an East Frisian home or other gathering, as well as with breakfast, mid-afternoon, and mid-evening. Tea is sweetened with kluntjes, a rock candy sugar that melts slowly, allowing multiple cups to be sweetened. Heavy cream is also used to flavor the tea. The tea is generally served in traditional small cups, with little cookies during the week and cake during special occasions or on weekends as a special treat. Brown rum, mixed with kluntjes and left for several months, is also added to black tea in the winter. The tea is alleged to cure headaches, stomach problems, and stress, among many other ailments. Religion. East Frisia is predominantly Protestant. In Crumhorn and around Emden, the Reformed Church is the dominant church, while in Leer, Norden and Aurich the Lutherans are the dominant church. However, the main church of the Reformed Christians is in Leer. There are 266,000 Lutherans and about 80,000 Reformed, so about 346,000 of the approximately 465,000 citizens of East Frisia profess one of the two denominations. Economy. East Frisia is a rural area. However, there are some industrial sites such as the Volkswagen car factory in Emden and the Enercon company in Aurich. Leer is, after Hamburg, the second most important location for shipping companies in Germany. Although just on the other side of the border to Emsland, the Mauer Werft is an important employer for East Frisians as well. Main industrial sites are the harbour towns of Emden and Leer, and Wilhelmshaven east of East Frisia. Around 1900, many people left East Frisia due to lack of jobs and emigrated to the United States, or elsewhere. Today the region is again suffering from the loss of young educated people who go away to find better employment in, for example, southern Germany. Many communities face a rising number of aged people, creating structural problems in the future. There are few academic jobs in the area, and those are focused on engineering. The closest universities are in Oldenburg and Groningen.